What if I told you that everything you want the most and will only happen when you stop chasing it? Yes, I know. It sounds crazy in a world that glorifies effort, control, and urgency. But here's something no one told you. The more you force, the more the universe locks up. And the more you let go, the more things mysteriously begin to align. Have you noticed that answers never come when you're in panic? That signs don't show up when you're screaming on the inside? Maybe it's because the flow doesn't respond to noise. It responds to surrender. In this video, I'm going to show you what really happens when you stop trying to control every step and start flowing with what life has been waiting to give you all along. You'll understand why anxiety fades, why the right people begin to appear, and why your creativity, the one you thought you had lost, returns with surprising force. We'll talk about synchronicities that feel magical, about decisions that finally become clear without overthinking, and about the indescribable feeling of realizing you were never alone. All of that without ready-made formulas, only with what's real, with experiences you may have already lived but never fully understood, and with truths that can set you free from a cycle of struggle and open the portal to ease. So if this message has already stirred something in you just from this intro, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now and turn on notifications to keep learning about quantum spirituality, self-awareness, and the true path of inner transformation. Because when you truly surrender, the universe stops whispering and starts speaking loud and clear. First flow, the moment the universe stops resisting you. There's a very specific moment when the universe stops pushing back against you, but not because it changed, it's because you stopped pushing. Most people don't even realize they're forcing a door that only opens with presence. For years, he felt like everything was a battle. For every step forward, there was a stumble. Everything got stuck, slipped, or reset. It was like rowing against an invisible current. Until one day, he just got tired. But getting tired isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's the beginning of surrender. And when he dropped his shoulders and silently said, "I give up trying to control," something inexplicable began to unfold. Things didn't change from the outside in. They changed from the inside out. His frequency softened, his gaze slowed down, and that door that had always been locked simply opened. You know those automatic doors at the mall? They don't open if you push them. They detect your presence, but only when you approach calmly, without force, without hurry, without ego. Ego, by the way, was the biggest obstacle all along. It was the one that needed to prove, to win, to control. The one that shouted, "Come on, push harder." But the universe doesn't respond to shouting. It responds to frequency. And when the frequency shifted, the doors began to give way. Not because he did more, but because he did less with more awareness. That's the key. Doing less with deeper presence. There was a specific day he never forgot. It was just a regular Monday. He decided not to force that difficult conversation. He chose to simply breathe. And out of nowhere, the answer came. Not from the mind, but from intuition. That was the day he understood. The outer resistance was just a reflection of the inner one. It was like the universe was a cosmic mirror, responding not to words, but to the vibration behind them. When surrender is real, there's no more tension in the body. The mind stops shouting, the heart stops racing. You don't need to open anything by force. The flow takes care of opening everything at the right time. That realization changes everything, because you stop feeling like life is against you, and you start feeling guided, not like someone who needs a map, but like someone learning to trust the silence of the path. So if everything feels stuck right now, don't push anymore, breathe, listen. Maybe it's simply time to pause so the door can finally open. And when the door opens on its own, you realize it was always ready, but you weren't, because you were still forcing what only blossoms with lightness. And it's in that space that something magical begins to happen. Second flow synchronicities increase instantly. There's a specific frequency where coincidences start to feel like messages. You glance at the clocks and it's always repeating numbers. You think of someone and a message appears. Some call it luck, others a miracle. But those who've surrendered to the flow, which you know it's just the universe saying, "Now you're listening." Synchronicities aren't magic, they're compasses. Little signs and that show up when the mind is quiet enough to hear the orchestra of the invisible. Before surrender, everything sounded like noise, but after, even a song on the radio became an answer. Even a random phrase on the street carried the weight of revelation. He remembers a specific day. He was lost between decisions, let it all go, went out walking with no plan, and a billboard said, "The answer is to trust." This kind of thing can't be forced. Synchronicity isn't manufactured. It only happens when you stop trying to control everything, when you lift your finger off the hose and let the flow find its way. While the analytical mind tries to predict, consciousness simply perceives, and in that perception, though coincidences turn into direction, you feel like you're on the path, even without a map. Some call it alignment, others say being in the right place at the right time. But the secret comes before that. It's about being in the right state. The outer only mirrors what has already organized itself within. He started writing everything down, each coincidence, each unexpected meeting, and he saw a pattern. Every time he let go of control, the magic happened. It's not about chasing signs. It's about living in a way that the signs show up naturally, as if the universe were a loving, attentive partner, ready to whisper, "Yes, keep going. You're doing well." But be careful. Synchronicities aren't there to feed your ego. They're there to bring you back to your heart. They're reminders that you were never alone and that something greater is orchestrating the invisible. When you accept that, anxiety loses its grip because now you feel that you're being guided, even if you don't know exactly where to. And with every new synchronicity, you're no longer surprised. You smile, like someone recognizing an old friend, like someone who knows it's him again, showing me the way. So the next time a sign appears, don't doubt it, don't rationalize it, just observe and feel if that frequency is a calling or a confirmation. Because when you start moving with the flow, coincidences turn into language, and the universe becomes your conversation partner, silent but deeply present. And if it's speaking to you like this, it's because you've finally become available to listen, to trust, to walk without knowing, and still keep going. Third flow, anxiety drops and clarity appears. When surrender is real, anxiety loses its stage because it was feeding on the need to control the future, to predict the unpredictable, to have answers before the question even arrived. But when you let go, the mind stops screaming, and in the silence that remains, something more subtle emerges. It's not logic, it's intuition. Clarity doesn't come from effort. It comes from the pause, from the moment you say, "I don't need to understand everything right now." And ironically, that's when it all starts to make sense. He experienced this at a difficult crossroads. 2 opportunities, both good. But something inside him didn't know which path to choose, until, exhausted from thinking, he simply stopped. He closed his eyes, breathed, didn't look for an answer. He looked for peace, and when peace arrived, it brought the answer with it. That's what most people don't understand. A racing mind is not a sign of productivity. It's a sign of disconnection. When the mind quiets down, the entire field reorganizes itself. Imagine a turbulent lake, muddy, swirling water. You can't see the bottom, but when the wind stops and the surface settles and everything becomes clear. Anxiety is internal wind, blowing in every direction. But it doesn't take you anywhere, it just scatters your pieces, until surrender gathers them back together. The body feels it too. The stomach relaxes. The chest opens up, the shoulders drop, and the air finally enters, as if it had permission. Clarity isn't knowing the ending, it's trusting the next step. It's realizing that the path reveals the destination, but only after you start walking, and never before. Before, he tried to predict everything. He built 1,000 scenarios, 1,000 backup plans, B, C, and D, but he always ended up stuck, paralyzed by the weight of too many options. After learning to let go, he discovered something powerful. The first right choice always comes wrapped in peace, even if the ego doesn't understand it. And yes, sometimes clarity comes as a whisper. You don't hear it with your ears, you feel it, like a quiet certainty that doesn't shout, but doesn't leave your chest. Anxiety is the echo of fear. Clarity is the extension of faith. And the difference between the two, it is how much you're able to trust what hasn't yet revealed itself. It's not about never feeling anxious again. It's about not living there anymore. About recognizing when it arrives and knowing you can breathe deeper until the flow returns. You don't need the answer to everything right now. You just need presence, because presence is the gateway to clarity, and clarity is the compass of alignment, and alignment dissolves fear. When you understand that, you stop chasing the solution. You sit in silence and you realize the solution had been chasing you all along. Fourth flow, the right people start showing up. There is a cosmic dance that only begins when you stop running in circles. And in that dance, the right people show up as if they had always been there, just waiting for you to finally open the door. These are not forced meetings. They're not dragged out connections. They are presences that fit, that vibrate on the same frequency, and that arrive when you stop blocking the entry. Before that, you live surrounded by noise, by relationships that drain, suffocate, or mislead, and you don't even realize you're trying to fit into frequencies that no longer recognize you. But the flow, it attracts what resonates with your new energy. There was a time when he thought he had to network. He forced conversations, initiated contact, tried to impress, but the more he tried, the emptier it all felt. It was effort without connection. Until he let go. He stopped searching and started being. He aligned with who he really was, with no disguises, no masks, no hunger for approval. And that's when the meetings began, first subtly. A conversation at the coffee shop, a random recommendation, an unexpected invitation from someone who seemed to know his soul. The curious thing is that these people were already nearby, but he didn't see them, because his field was still closed, because urgency blinds and desperation repels. When you surrender, the field creates space, and those who needed to arrive, not because you asked, but because you were finally ready. These meetings aren't just romantic or professional. They're spiritual, they're guides, mirrors, reflections. They come with messages disguised as hugs, conversations, or simple glances. The feeling is always the same. You sense you've known that person for lifetimes. They understand what you haven't even said yet. They see what you hide, and even so, they stay. Not every connection is forever. Some come only for a stretch, but they leave eternal imprints, and you realize it's not about how long they stay, but the quality of presence they bring. Sometimes that right person is you, the version of you that had been waiting for permission to show up. And when they do, you realize it was them you needed to meet first, so you could finally recognize the others. These people don't bring answers. They ignite lights, they remind you, they reveal, they reposition you inside your purpose. And the more you align, the more they appear. Like puzzle pieces that fall into place on their own when you stop forcing the image and allow the picture to emerge from the center. So don't chase connections, chase your truth, because those who belong to you by frequencies will always find you in the silence of the flow. Fifth flow, you enter the effortless action state. There comes a moment when you act, but it doesn't feel like effort. When you do, without feeling like you're forcing anything. It's when action doesn't arise from urgency or from fear of lack, but from presence, from the inner space that opens when the ego quiets down. He used to call this a productive miracle. Days when he did twice as much, with half the energy. Words flowed, conversations unfolded, and everything just felt simple. But it wasn't always like that. Before he rode against the wind, he believed success came from sweat, sacrifice, and exhaustion, until he realized the universe doesn't reward blind effort. It rewards alignment. That shift is subtle, but powerful. You stop pushing against reality and begin adjusting your sails. You learn to trust the direction of the wind. The wind here is the flow, the intelligence that moves life forward, and you no longer need to be the engine. You just need to be light enough to be carried. When intention is clear and surrender is true, you enter the doing without doing state, like someone dancing without counting the steps, just feeling the rhythm. This applies to everything. Relationships, projects, decisions. What once felt difficult becomes natural, not because the world changed, but because you changed the way you move through it. He remembers when writing felt like torture. He forced words, chased ideas, until one day he just breathed, sat in silence, and allowed the text to come. And it came whole. That's the secret of effortless action. Stop trying to do it all alone. Let the field assist you. Let intuition set the pace, not fear. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being precise, doing what needs to be done at the right time with clean, present, and connected energy. It's when doing becomes meditation. Each action becomes a prayer in motion. Each choice vibrates with purpose, and everything flows without losing its essence. This state isn't constant, but it can be cultivated. With simple practices, conscious breathing, daily silence, and above all, trust in the invisible. Because when you trust and the body relaxes, the mind cooperates and reality responds, as if saying, now we're in sync. And the more you live in this state, the less you tolerate forced effort, pointless urgency, fear-driven movement, because the flow taught you a new way to exist. Sixth flow, your old identity begins to fall away. There comes a time when your old version of self starts to feel uncomfortable. Not because it was wrong, but because it no longer fits, like a tight outfit that once protected you, but now suffocates. It's uncomfortable. After all, the old you was familiar. It even worked to some extent, but it was also armor, made of fear, control, and a need for approval. He felt it as a strange discomfort. People who once made sense and suddenly felt distant. Conversations lost their spark, and the search for validation lost its meaning. It's during this phase that the ego screams the loudest, because it senses it's dying, and in a way it is. That identity built on doing, proving, controlling, is being replaced by something lighter. But before the lightness comes the mess. You doubt yourself, feel like you're falling apart, but in truth, you're just shedding layers. Like a snake shedding its skin. The old shell begins to crack, there's no turning back, and at the same time, you're still not sure who's emerging underneath. In this in-between, the discomfort is real. You try to hold on to old habits, familiar patterns, but something inside won't let you, because the new frequency doesn't tolerate old sabotages. He went through this quietly. No big external crises, but inside everything felt like it was falling apart, as if life was saying, this character has played its part, now it's time for another. And then comes the temptation to go back, to hide in old versions, to pretend nothing is changing, but the flow doesn't allow backward steps. Because once consciousness expands, it no longer fits in the same old boxes. The old job, the repeated routine, the social mask, they all start to feel heavy. And the body gives you signals. Physical signs start to show up. Tiredness without reason, creative insomnia, or an overwhelming urge to disappear for a few days, just to be reborn in silence. This is the point where many give up. They confuse dismantling with failure. But this chaos is only the birth of the new. You're being reshaped, and that requires space. So if everything feels like it's falling apart, breathe. Maybe you're just shedding your old skin, and every piece that falls away makes room for the being you're becoming. This transition calls for compassion, patience with the process, and courage to keep going, even without knowing exactly who you'll be on the other side. But one thing is certain, you won't be the same. And even if the old you tries to return, remember this, that version only knew how to survive, but you were born to live, and living requires truth. Seventh flow, delays become protection, not punishment. The human mind hates to wait. It's been trained to rush, predict, and conclude. So when life says not yet, the ego hears it as rejection, but the soul knows it's often just redirection. Delays are often sacred disguises, invisible shields protecting you from what you can't see, detours of destiny. That only makes sense when you look back and sigh, I'm so glad that didn't work out. He went through this more than once, closed doors, offers that vanished, trips that got cancelled, and each of those pauses carried a hidden blessing. One day he missed a flight by just a few minutes. In that moment he cursed the universe in silence, felt sabotaged, forgotten, unfairly treated. But hours later, he heard about a crash on the very road he would have taken, and he thought, I was protected. Not every delay is suffering, not every wait is punishment. Sometimes the universe holds you back because it's clearing the path, or because you're not yet vibrating in alignment with what you're asking for. When you enter the flow, you understand this. Impatience gives way to trust. You stop stomping your feet and start observing the signs. Time stops being your enemy and becomes your ally. The clock of the universe ticks differently from yours. It doesn't run on fear, it syncs with the maturity of your consciousness and delivers when you're ready to receive. This doesn't mean you won't act. It means you act with peace, with presence, knowing that what's meant for you doesn't need to be taken by force. He had wished for many things too soon. Relationships, projects, answers. But over time he noticed, every time he forced the timing, he received something incomplete. And every time he honored the silence, something whole revealed itself. It was as if the universe whispered, "If you trust me in the dark, I will amaze you in the light." Delay teaches presence. It teaches humility, and above all, it teaches faith. Because it's easy to trust when everything flows. The challenge is to trust when everything stands still. But remember, just because you don't see movement and doesn't mean the universe is idle. Beneath the soil, the seed is cracking. In the unseen, the miracle is germinating. So if something didn't go as planned, maybe it's not the end. Maybe it's just the universe asking, wait a little longer. I'm preparing something you're not ready to carry just yet. And if you're able to breathe deeply through the delay without losing yourself, without giving up, you'll realize that what felt like a pause was just the universe fastening the seatbelt to take you farther. Eighth flow. Creativity and intuition activate fully. Creation doesn't come from effort. It comes from space, and space only appears when the mind stops trying to control everything, when it lets go of the plans, the rush, the fears, and simply allows. He always thought creativity was for artists, for people with talent. But over time he learned that to create is a spiritual act. It's listening to something within and giving it form in the world. But that only happens when the mind relaxes, because intuition doesn't shout, it whispers. And to hear the whisper, the noise must go quiet. It's like when you try to remember a movie title and only recall it after you stop trying. Inspiration is just like that. It comes when you step out of the way. Once he spent days trying to write something important, forcing sentences, turning over ideas. Nothing would flow until he walked away from the computer and went for a walk. And there, in the silence of the street, everything came. It came like a download, as if something connected above his head and poured in clarity. Words, images, sensations, all in order, all alive, all just right. That's intuition in motion. It's not logic, it's not thought, it's knowing without knowing how you know. It's creating without needing to explain where it came from. And the more you trust it, the more it shows up. Creativity isn't a skill, it's a consequence of silence, of surrender, of presence. So when you feel blocked, don't force it. Breathe. Let your body guide you. Sometimes a dance, a shower, or a walk is more productive than hours of strain. The mind is a tool, but it's not the creator. The creator is the field, and the mind just needs to allow it to flow, without blocks, without judgment, without interference. When the mud settles and the water clears, and what once was cloudy now reveals paths, ideas, and answers that were always there, waiting for you to step aside. He began to notice this in everything. Ideas would come in the shower. He felt direction while washing dishes. He heard guidance in the silence of the night. It was as if his soul had found its voice again. And it wasn't just at work. It was also in relationships, in daily decisions, in the smallest gestures. Everything felt more spontaneous, more connected, more intuitive. That's the beauty of surrender. You become a channel for life, for art, for the divine. And everything you do carries something that touches, transforms, and inspires. So if you feel like you've lost your creativity, maybe what you lost was silence, the pause, the trust in the unseen, because it's still there, just waiting for you to listen. Ninth flow. You realize you were never alone. There is a sacred moment, Hut, when everything falls silent within, and a gentle certainty warms your chest. You never walked alone, even when you thought you were lost. Even on the days when the ground disappeared, and everything felt like absence. Even in the midnight hours when only the void answered. Even in the falls, the pauses, the closed doors. You were accompanied, but not from the outside. Not by something that watches, punishes, or tests, but by a presence that lives within you, silent, compassionate, attentive. Always there. It had always been there, but your noisy mind kept you from noticing. The rush muted the signs, fear clouded your vision, self-sufficiency pretended you didn't need it. Until surrender came, and with it space, and with the space came feeling, and with the feeling what came reconnection, with something you had always been. He lived this gradually, first as intuitions, then as synchronicities, and then as warmth in the chest, a living presence, a faceless love. It was like having an inner GPS, calm, recalculating the route every time he got lost, never judging, just waiting until he was ready to listen. And when he finally listened, everything changed, not outside, but inside, because now he knew no matter what happens, there is a flow holding it all together. That flow is the part of you that already knows the way, that doesn't need guarantees, because it vibrates trust, because it knows everything has a purpose. Presence doesn't prevent challenges, but it transforms how you walk through them. You no longer panic because you feel held, even if you can't see by what. It's at this point that spirituality stops being a concept and becomes an experience. It's no longer about belief, it's about feeling that something greater lives inside of you. He began talking to that presence. In the silence, the pauses, the details, he no longer asked for rational answers, he asked for peace, and peace always came. Over time, he stopped searching for proof, because faith is not the absence of doubt. It's the heart's persistence in trusting even without knowing where it's going. And that faith doesn't come from effort. It comes from surrender. From the moment you say, I don't know, but I trust. When that happens, you feel life breathing with you. You sense that everything is orchestrated, that every step, every pause, every encounter is part of something greater. And even if everything falls apart, you keep going. Because you no longer walk just with your feet, you walk with your soul, guided by something that transcends time. That's why surrender isn't weakness, it's wisdom. It's recognizing that there is an intelligence in the invisible that knows you better than you know yourself. And it only needs one thing, your permission. Permission to guide you, to express through you, to flow through your life without resistance, without haste, without fear, only with presence. And when you say yes, the entire universe responds back. And now that you've felt all of this, tell me honestly, in what part of your life are you still forcing the door open, thinking that control will take you further? What part of your story is still resisting the flow? What version of you still believes that you need to suffer to be worthy? Maybe today is the day to release the wheel. Which of these signs had already been showing up around you, but you still hadn't recognized as an answer? Could it be that the universe was already trying to show you that the way forward isn't through effort, but through alignment? And what if the only thing missing was your trust? Trust in the invisible, trust in timing, trust in yourself. Which part of this video touched you the most? Write it down here in the comments. Even if it's just one sentence, your sharing might be the mirror another soul needed to read today. And if any part of this content brought you clarity, comfort, or even that silent tear that cleanses from within, like this video right now, tap the notification bell and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next deep dives. Your journey doesn't end here. It's only just beginning. And the next step is already waiting for you on the other side of surrender.